when we think about kind of major markets in the US, then Irvine certainly is one of them. However, the reality is that Irvine has a population of around about 350,000, which I think makes it like the 63rd most populous city in the United States. So, we think about places like Cincinnati, we think about places like Pittsburgh. Irvine actually has a bigger population in both of those cities, and it's up there with like places like New Orleans and like other kind of like sort of bigger cities.
Welcome everyone. I'm delighted to be here with Darren Hughes, and we are going to be talking to you a little bit more about DC's representation in Irvine, California, and what that means for everybody, what it means about the business that we're building out there. And there's a lot to pack in. So this is going to be the first of 3 podcasts. So stay tuned and come back for some more. And today is all about just giving you a little bit of background on Darren Hughes, who he is, and a little bit about the location and why we ended up there. And part 2 and 3 will be more sort of business focused, some of the things we're building out there, and we're just going to go with that. So welcome everyone, and welcome Darren. Great
Hi.
to see you. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much. I am good. It's a very hot, sunny London here. What's it like over there in the wilds of California?
It's basically the same as yesterday, and it's going to be the same as tomorrow. We have this like very consistent, like warm weather, hours of sunshine. It used to be the case like living in New York, and go back into my past in a little bit, but I would just like religiously like check the weather to, fingers crossed it'd be like a nice day. Here I don't do it at all. It's incredibly predictable, but yeah, it's beautiful today. So hopefully get to like take a walk on the beach later or something like that.
Great stuff. Well, look, let's get straight into it. I think there's a lot of people want to know, a bit more about who you are.
Sure.
Your involvement with DC. I obviously know you from way back in those heady days of Alta Vista and Yahoo and various other things. So if you could just give a very quick overview or snapshot of a little bit of background on yourself, that would be great. Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have more or less been involved in digital marketing and advertising for my entire career, going back 20 plus years. So as you mentioned, we worked together at Alta Vista back in the kind of .com like boom era. From there, worked at Google for a few years, where I had the opportunity to work with some, really kind of well-known big brands. Yeah, at Google for a few years, left Google, started consulting, moved to New York, and then from there I started up an agency. We did some work previously together with DC, a little consulting work, and that's it. So I've been like heavily involved in like the analytical side of marketing, really kind of working closely with businesses to kind of figure out like what their pain points are and how we can help them to improve performance across multiple channels, including like search, social, email, and so on. So really taking a strategic kind of view of problem solving and then figuring out ways in which we can do that.
Fantastic. A very, very good fit for DC. And you worked for a while in as you say, you went to New York, started your own business. I know you're a very successful entrepreneur. And then what made you come out to the wilds of Irvine, California?
Yeah, so a little happenstance, as was the majority of my career move, to be perfectly honest with you. So, as it did with a lot of people, COVID happened and really kind of shook things up. So before COVID, I had never any like idea or, thought of living in New York City. I'd been in New York for 15 plus years. That was like very much my home. I absolutely loved it. As you mentioned, I'd started a business which was doing really, really well. And then, kind of a lot happened during COVID in that we realized that, due to like technology and other reasons, it just kind of made sense for, we could operate the business successfully without losing like any motivation, like any other issues remotely. So it didn't really matter kind of where we were. So then, after growing up in London and living in New York for 15 plus years, the opportunity arose to move to California. I actually have some family out here as well, which is a little bit of a factor. But yeah, just after living for the vast majority of my life in colder climates, a lot of rain, then the idea of moving to California just really, appealed to myself and my wife. We have a couple of young kids as well, so it's just like a great environment for them.
Brilliant. That's fantastic, Darren. Thank you for that. And how British. We started this thing off talking about the weather,
There you go.
outrageous, but we can't help it. But there you go. So we started talking about the opportunity with digital clarity quite a while back. And I know we've done some kind of collaborative work in the past with some American clients. And what was the appeal to you and the opportunity for representing DC again out there on the West Coast?
Yeah, so I think there was somewhat of an alignment in terms of like our thinking around marketing, around digital, and around consultation and business growth in general. So, typically, agencies, and this is one thing I always wanted to get away from, was they were offering very kind of like singular services, like trying to push like what they were trying to push, be it like SEO, PPC, without taking that more kind of holistic view of like identifying what the issues were and what the solution was. So getting back in touch with you a few months ago, it seemed like very clear that we were thinking along the same lines about like what businesses like actually needed. And then on top of that, just like being in this location. So, for a variety of reasons, as you know, like California is essentially like, the technology capital of the world. Being in Irvine specifically, like that's just kind of like it just made sense for a lot of reasons, location wise. I mean, just in terms of the alignment of like, how we saw business moving forward.
That's great. That's great, Darren. And I think as well, I mean, Irvine, just for those of our wonderful viewers and listeners who don't know exactly where Irvine is, where does it sort of sit? You talk about California as the heartbeat of technology. The big five are all based there or have a presence there. So can you give me a rough kind of idea of the surrounds and what it's like and its location and stuff?
Yeah, so Irvine's interesting. To be honest with you, in my first 10 years of living in the United States, I don't think I'd ever really heard of Irvine before. I had no reason to come here. So like when we think about kind of major markets in the US, then Irvine certainly is one of them. However, the reality is that Irvine has a population of around about 350,000, which I think makes it like the 63rd most popular city in the United States. So, we think about places like Cincinnati, and we think about places like Pittsburgh. Irvine actually has a bigger population than both of those cities, and it's up there with like places like New Orleans and like other kind of like sort of bigger cities that you would like immediately think of when thinking of the US. So that one sort of thing, but I didn't realize honestly like up until like fairly recently. Another thing that really kind of interests me and what a lot of people don't know about Irvine is we have UCI, which is University of California, Irvine, which is considered to be like one of the most biggest and successful universities in the countries in terms of like MBA programs. It churns out a lot of like incredibly smart like engineers, doctors, and so on. So there's this huge kind of talent pool and this huge kind of like entrepreneurial spirit, which are like baked into Irvine specifically. Geographically, it's also really interesting. So Irvine is part of Orange County. Orange County is saddled between San Diego County and Los Angeles County. So when we're talking about San Diego and LA, which are obviously like two kind of major markets in a number of different areas. So yeah, I mean, we sit in Southern California, which again, going back to the weather, is incredible for the palm trees and so on. But yeah, 45 minutes north of San Diego, 45 minutes south of Los Angeles. So yeah, obviously like California is a huge state, fifth biggest economy in the world, and Irvine is just kind of like well positioned to like service all of those markets, as well as places like Scottsdale in Arizona, which is increasingly becoming a big tech hub close to Las Vegas. Obviously, a lot of the big exhibitions, expos, things like that, tech shows. So, and a 2-hour flight from the Bay Area in San Francisco, which again is like the most significant like tech hub on the planet.
Darren, that's a really good point you make there about the agency model. I don't know if you've ever come across the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. Phenomenal book. Came out quite a number of years ago now, but there's a great diagram in that book that talks about when people sometimes, it's related to business, but she talks about personal approach, and sometimes people feel anxious because it's all encompassing when they look at their situation that they're in. You know, they've got a report to do, they've got to speak to that client, they've got to do this, they've got to do that. But what she did was a very, very clever diagram of where she broke someone's life into all the different components, you know, eating, family, weekend, sport, you know, diet, gym, whatever. And when you look at all those different things, the aspect, this just the thing that you're feeling anxious about is just this one thing. When we do business, when we talk to our clients, because we're very strategy led, they are very focused on one thing, one very small component, which is just all about growth. And they just think that there's going to be a magic wand that's going to be done. You know, you're going to wave that, and then it's all just going to go. And I know you've come across this yourself, but really, when we work with them, we really deconstruct the whole of their scenario.
Yeah.
We have a process that we follow that we're going to be talking about in some of the other episodes. But yeah, so that's a really, really good point about agencies, and that's why that model is really struggling.
Yeah.
And so that's what we will come back and touch on. So great.
Yes,
Great.
well, I think like that traditional agency model is broken. There's always been like an overemphasis on like just traffic generation, which doesn't make like any sense. So like the feeling is, okay, well, we have a product and we have a website. All we need to do is like get some traffic to that website, and then all of a sudden, like magically, we're going to do a ton of business. The reality is that that's not considering what the consumer actually wants, where they're positioned in the market, who the competition is, and a bunch of other challenges. So this is why brands and businesses tend to go through this kind of continuous cycle of just like trying to figure out how to create more traffic without actually figuring out how to create more business. So, and that's one of the things I've always looked to correct.
Absolutely. And just to add to that, there's two people that I'll mention very quickly. One is a business called Winning by Design, based out in the Netherlands. Absolutely great bunch of guys out there. They're always talking about they have got a go-to-market strategy. So what you're talking about is really prevalent in the B2B space, and certainly for go-to-market for tech businesses. So GTM or go-to-market is a system that's used, but it's very badly misunderstood. I can ask 10 different people what go-to-market means to them, and I'll get probably 20 different answers. But the reality of it is so Winning by Design, this particular business, they use this kind of bow tie model that maybe we'll touch on in a future episode. But the other aspect is of what you talked about is going for clicks, going for these kind of things. Attribution is totally changed now. It's very hard to measure something. People are still measuring conversions to Google conversion data, when the reality of that is somewhat different. There's so many different components. B2B buyers now, they may go to an event or a show. However, the conversations they have, you cannot track that. You cannot track this podcast. You can see number of viewers, but we don't know how many other wonderful people and prospective customers are looking at this particular podcast. They're saying, actually, these guys are really talking to me. I need to speak to them.
Yeah.
The 95/5 rule. There's all these different things that we'll touch on. And really, attribution and how we measure things and bias committees and all these different things are really big problems, really big challenges for software businesses, tech businesses, and the like, because they really don't know their way around, because they're still working to a very old-fashioned model, MQLs, etc., marketing qualified leads. And my biggest bugbear is marketing sits over here, sales sits over there, and never the twain shall meet, which hopefully is beginning to change. So lots of things to talk about. Darren, thank you so much. We'll come back to this again in future podcasts. Thank you so much for your time, and we will speak again soon. Great stuff. Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.